Hey everybody, welcome back to Weld.com. So as you can see behind me, we got a crap ton of stuff laying everywhere. We're actually getting packed up to go to Fabtech in Chicago. So if you're in the area, go ahead and make sure to go to Fabtech. It's an awesome event. We're going to be teaching classes for ESOBU. It's going to be an awesome deal. So we'll be there Monday through Thursday. Special note, Tuesday evening, we're all going to meet up at the Goose Island Brewing Company there. I think 7:30 to 9 p.m. The Weld.com crew is going to be there. Jimmy McKnight from Arc Junkies podcast and the American Welding Society. We're all having a meet up for a Young Professionals Night. So stop by, meet the crew, hang out, listen to the podcast. It's going to be an awesome time. So what we have for you here today is another quick little tip on just a cool little tool you can build for yourself that's going to make life a lot easier. So if you have odd shaped pieces that you can't get your workpiece or ground clamp hooked to, if the piece is too big or your clamp's too small, we're going to show you a quick little tip, something you can build yourself, pretty simple, that's going to alleviate that problem for you. So you'll be able to hook your workpiece clamp to just about any type of material, shape, form, whatever. So I ran into this situation a lot when I was doing iron work. We used to have to do handrails, guardrails, and a lot of times the posts were in the concrete. We couldn't get a workpiece clamp over the piece of pipe or tube. Same thing with columns. Yes, you can weld a piece on here and attach your workpiece clamp that way, but this is just going to simulate a piece that's never ending. Okay, it's either encased in concrete, you can't reach it, or you know, you just can't put a workpiece clamp on it. So obviously these ends are uncapped. You could just put a workpiece clamp in there. Ta-da, you're done. But that's not the case. Okay, we'll only be working if we had to put a workpiece clamp right in this center area. How would we do that? So I'm going to show you a cool little trick on something you can build right at the house, and then throw in your work box or your gang box, tool box, and you have it with you all the time. So let's go check it out. Okay, so here I have some 4/0 cable, nothing fancy. You can use pretty much whatever you have laying around if you got a chunk of it. All I have here is a couple feet, I think about 5 or 6 feet, and then a couple eyelets here. This is just going to hold the ends once we get done with it. So just go through, make you a little cut. I like to twist the ends twist this as I'm pulling it off. That way it kind of keeps everything together for the most part. I'm going to take one of these eyelets, set it right over top of your wire cable, slide it down. It doesn't have to be perfect here, because we're going to cut all this off here in a second. Get you a little crimper. Now if you don't have a crimper, you can use a center punch and a hammer, or you can use a chisel and a hammer, a dull chisel and a hammer. You just want to crimp this on here so the ends don't fray, they don't start unraveling themselves. Okay, so I'm just going to smack this, I'll move it over, and I'll give it another smack. So that's the goal. Now it's pinched on there. Shouldn't come off anytime soon. So I'm just going to go through and just cut the jacket of this off so I can expose that copper wire. It's kind of like cleaning a snake. Alright, so now that's out of the way. So now you could go ahead and just crimp this end right here and right now. I don't like to do that because this stuff ends up twists and frays eventually. So I'm just going to segment this into 3 areas, and then we're going to braid it. So I have 6, 6, and 7. So now I'm just going to spread this all the way out up to the top, and then I'll just braid all these out. Okay, so I have this side clamped down, and I'm just going to braid this like I said. Otherwise you just end up with a wad of this stuff. It starts coming apart over time. So this just kind of holds it in place. So just a simple braid, you just go left over right, so on and so forth. Okay. Just keep tension on it. Just keep one end of it pinned down. Alright, that's about what I want there, so I'm going to go ahead and tape the ends just to keep everything together, because I need to cut this a little bit shorter so I can get that eyelet on there. So I'm just going to tape this pretty tight. That should be good. And then I'll be able to cut and have a clean end. And then I can drop this and I won't lose it. So go ahead and trim this off. Okay, now that end should fit right over top of there. I'm going to pull the tape off, but this is going to help bind everything together temporarily. I'll pull the tape off. Hopefully I can slip this on there real quick before it starts to unfurl, and then we'll get this crimped. So I cut about half of it back just so I can keep the tension on. If I cut this thing, it's gonna poof, kind of like a good strong beard in humid weather. So now I've got it on there. Tape's still exposed, so I'll be able to remove that. I'm gonna go ahead and crimp this. Okay, so now you can do this a couple different ways. Made this one a little bit longer, just for the sake of doing it, right? But depending on what you have, now I can come through and I can put my workpiece clamp right on here. I have a good solid workpiece connection. So as you can see, it's wrapped around there pretty tight. It's clamped pretty close, and that's because you don't want this thing moving or wiggling. You want to try to avoid arc strikes on the piece of material, because if you're welding on it and this is moved, you'll get arc strikes and pitting marks throughout the material. You don't want that. Okay, another thing you can do is just kind of, I mean, it's all up to the imagination now, you know. You take it just like this and choke it. I don't recommend picking anything up with this, obviously, for obvious reasons, you know. But you can go in there and now you can put your workpiece clamp on there. So you have odd shaped objects that you can't get your workpiece clamp on. This is a great little tip to be able to help you to do that. That way you don't have to, like I said, that way you don't have to weld, you know, a tab on there and then clamp onto the tab, right? You have this in the gang box already. Just wrap it around there a couple times, hook the workpiece clamp to it, get to welding, then you're done. It also doubles really well. I learned this from my buddy Jim Bollinger with Do Right Fabrication, his YouTube channel. You can actually wrap this around areas. So if you're doing stainless work, you have a T-joint on a tube, you can wrap this around that and then weld, and this copper kind of acts like a heat sink. So you don't necessarily have to use it as workpiece clamp. You can use it as a heat sink to kind of absorb and dissipate some of that heat to avoid coloring in your pieces, especially on polished stainless, things like that. So hope you guys enjoyed this, hope it helps. Hope you guys learned something. Appreciate you watching. Don't forget about the meetup over at Goose Island Brewery on Tuesday. Until next time, make your world better than your last.